career in cybersecurity. A little bit about myself. My name is Mike Redmond. I have been doing this for longer than I care to admit sometimes. Over 14 years, between IT and cybersecurity specifically. I've been the senior IAPM for PEO Missiles in Space, a senior advisor to 2- and 3-star commanders. I hold a master's degree in cybersecurity, a bachelor's degree in network engineering, a handful of certifications, including CISSP, CISM, certified ethical hacker, a handful of CompTIA certifications, and others that just quite honestly don't fit on the slide. Now, believe it or not, all of that came after I exited the United States Marine Corps. In the Marine Corps, I had nothing, well, near nothing, really to do when it came to IT or computers or cybersecurity. I was just another rifleman. My job was a 5711. For those of you that may know what that means, for those that you don't, my title was a nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare specialist. That's a fancy way of saying we did nothing more than play in the gas chamber all the time. So, but it was fun, awesome experience, and everything in what I'm going to talk to you about today, everything from then and prior got me to where I am today. I encourage you to ask questions along the way. I'll be checking the chat regularly if I can answer questions during the webinar itself, during the content of the webinar. I absolutely will. Otherwise, feel free to type them in the chat, and I will get to those questions at the end of the webinar. So what are we going to talk about today? Everything from helping you understand that wherever you are now, it does not dictate where you're going, right? Especially in this field. This is I mentor a lot of young people and some older people getting into cybersecurity and try to help them understand that you may have preconceived notions of what you have to be able to do to start a career in this field, and I promise you, you don't, right? You need to get rid of those preconceived notions, and I'm going to explain a little bit of that along the way. We're going to talk about some of the demand in some of the different industries that you may or may not be thinking of that have a high need, right? That are actively searching and recruiting for all levels of cyber specialists, right? Whether it's entry level, all the way up to expert, and I'm going to try to help you understand how to map that out. How do you go from maybe where you are to where you want to be? Everyone may be in a different position, right, in their evolution, and maybe just not know what might be the next step to take, or just maybe want a little advice or help to get to that next step. And so those, for all of those people, that is why I decided to do this particular talk today, to get everyone as much help as they possibly can. And I'm sure you've heard that there is a severe shortage of cybersecurity professionals, and that is absolutely true. I deal with it every day. I don't have enough hands to do the huge tasks that I have to do for the organizations that I either consult for or that I work directly for. And the more people that we can get understood how to get in this field, at the end of the day, and it's going to sound a little selfish, but it's the truth, it's going to make my job just a little bit easier. Believe it or not, I had hair when I started all of this. So let's get into it. So let's understand first and foremost that technology moves fast, right? It moves faster than we could ever hope to keep up with it. but understanding it's not moving so fast that you can't catch up with it, right? And I hope you understand what that means, right? That especially unless you're working, for certain industries or for certain organizations, you don't have to necessarily be on the bleeding edge of everything. But as long as you have a good foundation under you, as long as you understand how technology is working around you and influencing your surroundings, and in some ways being able to anticipate what's coming next. Those are the type of challenges that we're facing, right? Nobody has a crystal ball. We don't necessarily know what the next hot thing is going to be, but in a lot of times it does telegraph itself, right? I mean, you kind of knew. I mean, if you think back, and of course, hindsight being what it is, but you could think back and say, everyone's going to want a Bluetooth speaker, right? It's just much more convenient. Who doesn't want, for instance, to set up a backyard, patio area with music? And those of you that can remember, and I'm going to try not to date myself too much, how much of a challenge it was to hardwire speakers in your backyard patio. Well, now I don't have to hardwire speakers because I can connect via, connect speakers, one or many via Bluetooth. So you can kind of see just by what the marketplace demands, what the next thing is going to be. More recently, IoT, right? The Internet of Things. You saw it and you knew everyone was going to want it. Who doesn't want to be able to adjust their thermostat and turn their lights on and off from anywhere in the world? No matter if you're here, that means that you have a little bit of nerd in you, and whether you're an early adopter or a late adopter, you knew when you saw it that at some point in time you wanted to be able to turn your lights off from across the country, right? And those are the things, those are the type of professionals that we're hoping to recruit and nurture. The people that understand that technology is not going anywhere. It's here to stay. It rules everything around us, and especially now, right? With the coronavirus and everyone kind of being sheltered in place, you see with glaring clarity the organizations that not necessarily leaned forward, but leaned into technology, the ones that were able and capable to move directly from an on-site work environment to an off-site work environment. The organizations that were in the some of the cities and municipalities and states that were easily able to move from traditional school settings to distance learning settings, right? This time right now is a glaring example of organizations and companies and industries that are going to thrive going forward. And you're going to see that a little, throughout this talk that we're going to have, that those are the ones, those are the industries that are in high demand. And because there's a shortage, you have the ability to position yourself for high reward if you take some of the right steps, right? So when I say in high demand, right, what does it mean? So you hear these terms like there is a need for skilled security experts. Well, what does that really mean? What is a skilled security expert? Well, if you think about it, if you think about it in the most general logical terms, think about what the average person knows about computers and computing, just setting security and cybersecurity to the side for a second. If you know more than them you have become skilled. You have become a source of information for them. So that's why I say don't have preconceived notions about what it takes to get into the cybersecurity field. Literally what this field is about, it's Darwinism at its best. The harder you work, the more reward you're going to get. And it goes not only for hard skills. Not only do I know, the architecture of a computer or how to administer a server, whether it be, a domain controller and, an Exchange server. Do I know, how to develop applications? Do I know, software development? It really comes down to, do I know more than the next person? And can I demonstrate that? Right. So those are the hard skills that everyone wants to concentrate on. What I hope to be able to get across to you over the course of this next half hour or so is not only the importance of the hard skills, but the importance of the soft skills as well. I hire a lot of people doing what I do, and I will attest that it's not always the person with the most hard skills on their resume that I select. A lot of it does come down to how well can they perform the soft skills? How well do they communicate? How skilled are they at being able to get a point across? That is as much as of a security expert or security professional as any of the soft or any of the hard skills can possibly be. So hopefully you can, you're understanding that. And like I said, if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to just jump in and put them in, like I said, put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A, and I will be more than happy to answer them along the way. So specifically when it comes to certain industries across the cybersecurity landscape, we notice and we understand that we are more and more reliant on interconnectivity. Again, you really need to look no further than the last 3 to 4 months to understand how interconnected we are. And some of the disciplines within the cybersecurity field are disciplines that people may not necessarily recognize, immediately as a cybersecurity field. So let's do this. Let me offer you a definition of what encompasses cybersecurity. And this is a question that I get at work all the time. The day job that I go to on most days, as well as the organizations that I consult for, because they don't understand necessarily what is cybersecurity. Well, so the definition that I'm going to offer you is simply this. Things that I, as a cybersecurity director, need to be aware of and have oversight to is anything that can affect either negatively or positively the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of the data of that organization. Now, if you accept that simple definition, try to think of all the things that affect confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data within an organization. And the longer that list gets, the more you can see how you don't necessarily have to be a keyboard warrior to enter a cybersecurity field. You may already have or may already be in a cybersecurity field as we define it currently and just not know it. One example that I can offer you, for instance, is supply chain risk management. Supply chain risk management is a cybersecurity field. How do you apply that, or what can I give you from an example from today of how supply chain risk management or poor supply chain risk management can affect an organization overall, whether it be, you know, an organization singularly as a corporation, whether it be a governmental organization, whether it be a nation. Supply chain risk management can, or poor supply chain risk management can affect adversely your ability to meet a mission. So, for example, our current hospital capability, right? Our current hospital capacity as a nation was not prepared for all hospitals to be overwhelmed at once. We're very modularized in this country, right? So while Kansas, their hospitals were fine. They weren't seeing a huge surge in patients coming in with a strange unknown virus. New York, California, New Orleans, they got overwhelmed. But because the rest of these states were now anticipating being overwhelmed, the surplus of supplies that they had in other states could not necessarily be given up to states that needed it. How could that have been fixed? Well, it could have been fixed from just observing the supply chain. Where do we get these supplies? What happens if the supply chain is disrupted? What happens if the supply chain is tainted? These are all things that I, as a cybersecurity professional, that I, as the director for cybersecurity of a defense contractor, these are things that go into decisions that I make every single day. And none of them necessarily require me to be able to bend code or write programs or hack a box from across the planet. It is overall holistic security. So don't be afraid if you don't necessarily know all the details of technology, because you don't need to get into this field. This field is wide and varied, and many talents serve the needs of this field. And there are many industries and organizations looking specifically for people that have what I call non-classical cybersecurity talents, if that makes sense. So how do you mold yourself to get where you want to go, and what is the advantage of doing so? Well, breaches are happening every single day. Some of them you hear about, most of them you don't. But depending on the industry or the organization, they need people capable or able to not only prevent the breach from happening, but be able to respond when the breach does happen, because it will, as well as people able and capable of reducing overall liability for an organization when the breach happens, regardless of the attack origin, right? We put a lot of things in this basket that we call cybercrime, right? And it's one of those things that it has become a catch-all for things that we just don't know where to put other things, right? And at this point, the basket is getting kind of overflowing, if you understand. Not all things that are necessarily labeled as cybercrime are truly cybercrime, but that is an advantage to us, right? To current and prospective future cybersecurity professionals. It's an advantage for people to keep putting more and more into that catch-all basket, because that means they're going to need more and more varied skill sets to be able to accommodate all of these different things going into this catch-all basket. So understand that one of the first things that I advise people is that over time, the one field, if you look back just through history, right, go back to the late 90s-ish up till now, there is one distinct field that, regardless of the economic situation of locale or the nation, has always increased, and that is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is currently what and for the foreseeable future, what I call a recession-proof field. While people are scaling down other types of skilled labor, those positions that they are giving up are that the money allocated for those positions are being shifted towards cybersecurity positions. That only means good things for those that can position themselves well now to take advantage of them when they're available, right? The market for cybersecurity is expected to grow to over $152 billion between 2018 and then 2023. From $152 billion to $248 billion. That's a 100+ fold increase. Why would you not take advantage of it if you have the ability to do so? And I am living proof that the ability, right, is nothing less than your ability to chase after it. I try to find a different way to try to make people understand that, but honestly, I cannot find kind of a more direct way of saying that your ability in this field is limited by only you. Is it hard? Sure. Is it difficult? No, not really. Whether you're single, young, fresh out of high school, no kids, not married, all the way up to you're thinking about changing a career, and you're a single parent by yourself, just having to make it happen. It is possible if you're willing to just attack it, right? One of the questions that I get asked is often is, did I ever get discouraged as I began moving into this field? Because like I said, IT and cybersecurity was not my first choice coming out of high school. My original degree, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I went to school in a small suburb of Columbus, Ohio called Westerville, Ohio. I went to the Ohio State University. Originally, I was in pre-law and decided I didn't want to take a whole bunch of history classes, and ended up with a bachelor's degree in psychology. And, to look over the last 30 plus years, how did I get from a bachelor's degree in psychology to advising, 3-star generals about cybersecurity posture for the military? And did I get discouraged when I made that shift? And the answer is yes, right? I went back to school at the age of, I think I was 30 years old. And I saw all these young kids around me that knew, the latest and greatest and hottest graphics card to do this, and, how to build this gaming computer to do that. And I didn't know any of that. I mean, I had always been around computers. I'd always used computers. But I'm a son of an English teacher, right? So she just made, my mother made me use computers because she knew that computers were going to be around. But one of my instructors, I voiced, my concerns to one of my instructors. And he told me, he said, mark my words, half of these kids that know the latest, greatest graphics card and what to put into what gaming computer or whatever, they're going to flame out before graduation. So just keep doing what you're doing, and you'll be fine. And sure enough, the class that I started with whittled itself down by about half by time graduation came up. So that's just one example of many I could give you that yes, you're going to get discouraged along the way, because no, it's not easy. But it's also not difficult. It's hard. It's going to be work, but the reward is paid. The reward is paid tenfold if you put your mind to it. So looks like I have a question in the chat. Can you provide an example of someone entering this field from some IT background but no cybersecurity expertise while obtaining a certificate from FAU? FAU, I'm going to assume that is Florida Atlantic University, maybe.
That's right.
So again, I am that example. When I went back to school, my intent was I wanted to build networks. I wanted to be a network architect. So all I wanted, I went and, pursued my CCNA and then my CCNP, and I just wanted to build and design network architecture. And over time, pretty quickly, honestly, security just took over, right? People, yes, they wanted networks built, but they wanted networks built securely. So I had to learn more and more about how to do what I had been trained to do, right? What my bachelor's degree was in network engineering, but not how to just make it work, but how to make it work securely. So I made a distinct shift, moving from just building networks to designing secure networks, and then ultimately advising about those networks. Now, I landed in the Department of Defense, right? I've worked for the DoD kind of from the beginning, right? I mean, I had a short stint for a couple of years as an IT director for a casino down in Biloxi, Mississippi, but quickly, right? Just, and I think it was just because I had friends that were still in the service or recently, left the service. I got pulled back into the Department of Defense. So, and I've been in the federal sector, kind of ever since. But I have lots of friends, more friends otherwise than that are in the Department of Defense, that work for other sectors. Right, whether it's banking or retail or energy, healthcare, cybersecurity is one of all of the cybersecurity sectors, right, or areas, is probably the most explosive right now. Because of some of the very unique challenges that you run into in the healthcare industry. There are things that, for instance, I as a cyber director for Walmart, and how I would mitigate an issue or a pending issue or an active issue in a chain of Walmart stores, I cannot employ that in a hospital because it would involve, cutting off data streams and quarantining devices and things like that. And those devices may be keeping someone alive, right? So I have to approach those types of issues holistically different than I would elsewhere. And so, it takes a certain kind of mentality, right, to be able to think through some of those kind of life and death situations that you're going to be dealing with when it comes to cyber in the healthcare industry. But if that's an industry that excites you, maybe you have a background in healthcare, which will do nothing more than help you, right? I mean, if you're an EMT now or a nurse now, moving into security and cybersecurity in the healthcare field will be just that much easier for you, because you're already going to understand some of the challenges that face the professionals in those areas, right? One of the things, as I talk to some of my peers around the country, and ask them, okay, so what do you look for, or what have you found over time is the best hire that you've made? And a lot of them tell me that they're individuals that they already worked in that sector, right? They already worked in banking, or they already worked in healthcare, or they already worked in retail, and they made a move over into cybersecurity. They ultimately became shining stars because they already kind of knew the challenges, right, that they faced in, just in a different area. So they came at problems with a different approach, right? None of them necessarily had an IT or a computer background. It's just they decided one day that they were going to shift, kind of career paths. So kind of, you might want to keep that in mind. What you might be doing something now in an industry that you really love being in, right? Or a sector that you really love being in. You don't necessarily have to leave that sector just to switch a career path, right? A lot of cybersecurity is and can be lateral movement if you allow it to be. I guess is the moral of that story. Excuse me. So I told you, right, that I at one point I was pre-law, right, when I first got out of high school, and I to this day am still considering killing myself and going back to school to get a law degree because it has been identified that there is a severe shortage of lawyers that understand cyber and cybersecurity. So those are the types of things, right? As I live my life, those are the types of things that I look for is, where is there somewhere I can take advantage of to give myself a leg up, somewhere. There's a saying that life is what you make it. It's not what's given to you, right? So the more articles I read that there's a shortage of lawyers that understand cybersecurity, well, maybe that's something I can take advantage of. So even now at this point in my career, I'm considering going to an online law school to get a JD degree to possibly start not necessarily, I don't think I want to practice law, but having a law degree and doing cyber kind of gives me the ability, right, to open doors and do things that I maybe can't do currently, right? So let's see. Galaxy says, I currently work as a physical security officer in healthcare environment and school district. Thank you very much for what you're doing. I have a bachelor's in law and thinking of starting a master's in information assurance and cybersecurity. What's your advice? Do it. Do it. If you already have a law degree and all you have to do is finish what would it be, the graduate degree, and pulling information assurance and cybersecurity in with it, you at the end of that road, right? You probably have 3-4 more years to do, but at the end of that road, I can probably guarantee you will write your own check pretty much wherever you want to go. That is, I have read, just these past 4 months alone, I've read 3 different articles looking for people just like you. Currently, what is the hottest or some of the hottest trends when it comes to cybersecurity? Right now, it's all centered around cybersecurity architects and cybersecurity engineers. And I think kind of for obvious reasons, right? So, cybersecurity architects, those are more, for instance, like, what I do. I have a team of individuals that, that do, scanning and do malware analysis and install and administer VPNs and routers and switches and, things like that. Employ, cryptographic mechanisms, and I simply oversee them, right? Making sure that we've, asked all the right questions and we've, approached everything in as many different directions as we possibly can. Those, are people that usually fall more into the security architect bucket. Security engineers, generally those are usually more your coders, right? Application developers, things like that. Malware analysts, right? People that like tearing apart code to try to find issues and vulnerability with it. Those are 2 fields that again are probably in the most demand right now, and just seeing their earning potential, right? Just seeing how much money on average, right? These are average salaries that I pulled out, just pulled straight out of, I think dice.com, or I think it was, just seeing that the average for an architect, $120,000 a year, an average for an engineer, nearly $100,000 a year. And to do it, right, whether or not you do it currently or not is kind of immaterial, because these are subjects that kind of anyone can learn, as long as you put your mind to it. Now, some people have a better aptitude for some things than others. I found out very early in my career that in no way, shape, or form was I ever going to be a happy coder. I don't have the patience to sit and look through thousands of lines of code to find the wrong procedure call that's, making it say goodbye world instead of hello mom, right? That's just not me. I'm not built for that. But being able to look at a network architecture and all the devices and data flows and seeing where issues are, right? I just was more apt, in that direction. So that's kind of the direction that I pushed. So, a lot of it, yes, depends on your personality. But again, there is a way to find your personality in any one of these careers. So what does it take, right? So other than the obvious, right? Short, the classical route of, getting a bachelor's degree in one or more of the technology fields, like information technology or information systems, things like that. This is one of those fields that relies still heavily on certification. And so the certifications that are most sought after, kind of most important, as you either are beginning your career or advancing your career. Things like Security Plus and Linux Plus are kind of staples. They're kind of, absolutes. A CISSP or a CISM are highly sought after certifications because those certifications have a high degree of repute, right? They're highly respected. People that can pass those exams have shown an absolute proficiency to know kind of what they're doing with things. Certified ethical hacker is I think going to be around for a good long time. It's one of those, depending on what position I'm hiring for, it really depends on how much weight I give the certified ethical hacker certification, but it is absolutely a certification that I use as a delimiter, right? All things being equal, right? If I have two equal candidates, one has a CEH and one does not, I have a tendency to lean towards a CEH. Now, some of that may be just some biases on my part, because when I first entered the DoD, my first job for 3 years in the DoD, I was working on red teams, so I kind of lean towards that way, but kind of take that with a grain of salt. One that is you may find unusual or even surprising, that if you have the ability, I highly recommend at least exploring, is going and getting a Splunk architect certification. The world is moving, and well, has moved to big data analyzation. That's how we're finding, advanced persistent threats, and that certification, that specific software, is one that is enjoying a resurgence across the country. So if you like analyzation, if you like decomposing audit logs and things like that, getting a Splunk certification again will raise your value within the field as a whole quite a bit. Honestly, it will. So let's see, I got a couple more questions here. Let's see, I joined cybersecurity back in India for 2 months and changed my career to hotel management from Scotland. I've always wanted to visit Scotland. I haven't gotten there yet. Basically, living in the US, I continue to change my career, cybersecurity expert, but I have no background, but can I still join from scratch? Yes, you can. There is not an age limit on this career. This career field does not have a shelf life. And I guess I can maybe qualify that by, okay, so what careers do I feel have a shelf life? For instance, I don't think right now at my age, which I am I'm going to continue to say very young, 46 years old. I don't think I could go back to medical school and become a doctor, right? That's kind of one of those fields like I kind of feel have a shelf life. And then in contrast, this is not that type of field. You can get into it, kind of literally at any age, that you make that decision. Name is Sobia. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Bachelor of Arts degree, CHFI. Next month, going to take a CCNA, doing IT support for Google. Well, good for you. I also applied boot camps, but you didn't show up. So I'm not sure what you're asking. Let's see. I also applied for security boot camp in your university, but you don't show up. So you might have to expand on that a little bit and tell me what you mean. I don't show up. But in general, I will say, I'll have to default to Shane, but I do not believe the master's requires a GRE. I don't believe so. What I can tell you is where I received my master's, I did not have to take the GRE. All I had to do is have a bachelor's in the same career path. Right. So that's a good question, and I will see if I can find that answer for you. I believe I have your email address, so I will search your email address off the list, and as soon as I find an answer for you, we'll get you an answer. The last certification that I referenced, the last certification I referenced was the Splunk Certified Architect. That is an outstanding certification, not super hard to get. If you've ever dealt with any type of data analyzation, it is fairly pedestrian to obtain, and a lot of employers are starting to search for Splunk certified professionals. So yes, I can. What are the skills that are absolute? Absolute skills, or areas, right? I guess would be best for me to say. Intrusion analysis, malware analysis. Those are kind of more detailed oriented skill sets. People that like to tear apart code and tear apart audit logs and things like that. Those types of skills, analytical skills, will help you achieve. Programming skills. If you've ever been interested in writing programs or writing applications or anything like that, they're always looking for programmers. Not necessarily programmers that quote unquote are good programmers. The market has shifted to people that just know how to program. They know the language, but they pay attention to security ahead of necessarily application, right? Risk analysis and security analysis, those are people that are more broad-based, right? They take a more macro look at things. What is the organization or the corporation's overall risk posture? Where are we absorbing risk? Where can we eliminate some risk in some places, to accept risk in others? So most all of those types of positions, risk analysis and security risk analysis, they're very macro based types of skill sets. And if that's you, right, if you like to take and look at a big problem and then decompose it down into kind of smaller problems, that is probably a good career field for you to consider. Again, that's the type of person, for instance, that I am. I like to, all the organizations that I've taken over in the last 5 years of my career or so, they were just broken organizations. I kind of view them as a 1,000-piece puzzle, and I want to put the puzzle back together. Right? You can't do it all at once. You got to find a piece at a time and make it fit. Put the borders on, put the clouds together, and then ultimately, finally, you'll have one complete puzzle again. And that's what risk analysis and overall cybersecurity analysis for an organization entails. Is you kind of have to like to put puzzles together.